Welcome to the Capstone review. So we're coming to the very end of the semester, and in this video I'm going to do a pretty thorough review of your capstone assignment. So this video will have three parts. The first is we'll just go over the actual assignment in Blackboard quickly and just review it. And then you'll see a little video from a previous semester where I just highlight the process that you're going through this whole semester using your financial planning portal. So that'll be a short 9-10 minute video. And then part two will be an actual assignment, one of my favorite assignments that a student submitted in a previous semester, just to give you an example of what I'm looking for and what an assignment that received 0 deductions. So I think that'll be helpful. And then finally, in part 3, I'm going to do a little bit of a deeper dive. For those of you who are struggling and you're not sure what to put into your data cards, you'll get a little bit more information. Most of you won't even need part 3 of the review, but it will be there for anyone who wants to. And as always, remember, you're watching this on YouTube, and you can set the speed of the video to up to twice as fast. So believe me, you can listen and watch much faster than I can talk. So I hope that helps. So let's jump right in. Part 1, we're going to just take a look at the assignment, the actual assignment in Blackboard. So everything's lined out there. Excuse me. So one of the things you'll see is a link to this video on YouTube, and that's what you'll want to do, is watch the video. And so there's some other materials posted in moneystudygroup.com, and they will be there as well. So I'm not going to spend much time here. I just want you to see each of these headers along with specific instructions and helpful information underneath each header. And these are basically your screenshots that you'll need to produce to create your report. And then naturally, always, please submit one PDF report. Put it all together into one report. So you'll see this. It's now posted. Now for part 2, we're going to jump over here to my iPad, and I'm just going to show you the capstone report. This is, again, a nice report that was completed by a student, and it shows you here's the right amount of content, really. So we start with the balance sheet. This student provides some helpful insights about their own balance sheet. So, and they include the details just like is outlined in the instructions in Blackboard, so that I can see what their graph, their balance sheet graph, is made up of. And you can see that as well in your financial plan. And then we go on to the data card called budget. If you linked your cards, you'll have access to this. If you didn't, you're going to have to provide some additional information to talk about your budget, your spending plan, and so on. But this student was smart, took my advice, linked the credit cards, and so it's showing up nicely in the report. And you'll want to do that as well. You can't have access to the budget component unless you actually link your credit cards. So we went over that several times throughout the semester, and that's why it's important. Here's an important piece of the puzzle. It's the debt strategy. You'll remember the Credit Crush assignment. Well, this is where that comes together in the capstone, and you'll notice that this student, and hopefully you, put in their capstone assignment, in their report, they took a picture, a screenshot of their debt management strategy showing the results of applying this strategy. And in their case, it was to pay the highest to lowest interest rates, which is typically the #1 strategy for debt repayment. So that's an important piece of the capstone. And again, comments, a brief summary of what you did in your plan and why is a really important part of the entire capstone. So in each of these data cards with the screenshots, you're giving me the information from your plan along with your comments. So this is asset allocation. Now in this case, you can see the student didn't have really good asset allocation in their plan, but they explained it, and so I didn't mark this student down. And I'm not really critical in terms of super critical. I don't expect you to get this perfect, but this student did make some mistakes here in asset allocation. And in this section, they talked about tax allocation, which is different than asset allocation. So again, I don't believe I marked this student down, but I wanted to just kind of highlight that in this video that as far as asset allocation goes, the student says I stayed on the basic 50-50-50 strategy, and that's not really a strategy. That's tax allocation. So most of you did really well in that previous assignment where you were supposed to take $150,000 and invest it in 3 different types of accounts: the big blue bucket, and the tax deferred or tax deductible bucket, and the Roth IRA. And that's what the student is referring to. And I knew that, but I do want to clarify there's a difference between asset allocation and tax allocation. So again, this is what the student was talking about. So got the tax allocation correct, and most of you did as well, and you won't have to do anything except include that in your capstone report. So the student went on to give me some helpful brief narrative about holdings, in other words, asset classes in the plan. So that was helpful. And then we get into the retirement analysis. In this case, the student was able to move the needle by making a couple of tweaks in the plan, and that's what I'm looking for in your capstone. What did you do to move the needle, and did it make sense? So that's so far. And then we get the cash flow summary screen, which really helps you identify if you've got something weird or totally wrong going on in your plan. The quickest, easiest way to figure that out is just to jump into cash flow and take a closer look at, what are the numbers. And so again, I don't expect you to be an expert, but I would like you to know, your plan is based on inflows and outflows, and your cash flow section in your plan is a really helpful, easy way to jump right in to see what's going on in your plan. Just like if you were looking into your spending habits, that if you could look in to see where the money's coming from and where it's going, that would be a helpful insight for you. And so in your financial plan, cash flow is a very important part of your plan. And then we get into net worth. Again, these are all outlined in the assignment in Blackboard. I just wanted to give you kind of an overview of what this final assignment would look like. And yours may look different, but this gives you a good idea, a template, if you will, for how much content is appropriate and really appreciated as you do your capstone assignment. So I'm going to kind of leave that there. Again, these instructions are outlined in your Blackboard assignment, but this is just a student's assignment that I thought came out nicely. It had all of the details that I needed to be able to give some input, some input and direction, and the capstone assignment primarily for this student and every student who does the capstone assignment. It's designed to show me that you get what's involved in your financial plan. And really, this whole semester we've been focusing on the basic elements of a standard personal financial plan. And then finally, I want your definition of a financial plan. So that's just a paragraph or two of you giving me your definition of a financial plan. So that's the end of part 2, the actual review of a student's assignment. And that will cover part 2. Let's jump into part 3. We'll go a little deeper. And for those of you who don't need this assistance, thanks for watching the video. And for those of you who do, let's just get to work. So part 3, we're going to go a little deeper. In this section of the video, I just want to show you a little bit more information about each of the data cards. So this is a balance sheet. And you notice I've got 3 students who I took their plans and just unpacked them, grabbed some screenshots. And this is student number 3. You can see their net worth is positive, and that's good. And then we go to student number, let's go to student number 1, and you can see they have a little bit of a negative. It's not real negative, but their net worth is negative. That 0, that's the line. That blue mark is below the line. So their assets and liabilities exceed their assets. So just helpful to know, to see and understand what is part of your financial plan. And this is a basic and very helpful piece of your financial plan, your balance sheet. So that's part of the plan here. So we've got that's student 1. We looked at student 3. Let's look at student 2. So student 2 has a much bigger deficit, which means their liabilities are much more than their assets. So as we get into student 1 and student 2 and student 3, as we look at their retirement analysis, you're going to notice some things about student 2 and student 3. So again, student 3 had a little bit of a $100,000 net worth, so their probability of success is very likely to be better. Student 1 had a small negative balance net worth, and then student 2 had a pretty big, a bigger negative net worth. So that's the balance sheet. We get into the balance sheet details, and let's see. Again, this just unpacks where your assets are, and so that's that section of your plan. You don't necessarily need to give me this in your capstone assignment, but this is where you can jump in and see if something's out of whack. The balance sheet details for student number 3. Let's look and see. Here's student number 3, I guess. So now let's just jump into net worth, or liquidity rather. Liquidity is just a quick, easy analysis to see, do you have enough liquidity? Student number 1 obviously is not. Student number 2 has their target liquidity is for 3 months of living expenses. That's $19,000, and their current liquidity is only $2,600. So that's just a quick kind of indicator about how your plan is doing in terms of your emergency fund. So let's see. We've got student number 3. Their current liquidity, 0. That's not good. So something for you to consider in your plan. Now let's jump into budgeting summary, and this is one of the areas that I want to really take a minute and focus on, because in the first section of the video, well, the second actually, I showed you a student's assignment, and they had done a budget. They had linked their cards. So this is student number 3, and you can see that they didn't link their card, so they have no budget, they have no transaction information. This is student number 2, and it looks very different. It looks more like the one that you saw the assignment example from. So this student did link their cards, therefore they have this information in their plan, and it will make their capstone assignment look much more complete. So if you didn't link your cards, you need to give me some information about your previous budget. If you're using a different budget tool, just bring that into your capstone, grab a screenshot, and give me a little narrative about your spending plan. Where did your money go over the last 3 months? And just give me a little narrative. So if you didn't link your cards because you were afraid of sharing that information, that's fine. I don't want to make you feel pressure to do that, but you do need to provide your budgeting summary, including your last 3 months of very accurate spending. That's the only way you're going to get a handle on your spending, is to keep track of it, to be accountable. And that's what this section of the capstone and this section of your plan is all about, your budgeting summary. So let's see, and again, we've got student number 1 and then student number 3. Wait, I went to the wrong place. Student number 3 did not link the card, so needs to put some more information in the plan. Student number 1 didn't link the cards. Student number 2 did. So student number 2 wins, and that's what I wanted to highlight there. So let's talk about asset allocation now. So you can see this is similar to the student who was in the example. This student did not really do anything for allocation. So let's take a look at student, this should be student 2. So this student, you can see the difference, has allocated their investments appropriately. So again, I'm looking for your input. Tell me why you did what you did, and then take a picture of it and just show me your asset allocation. Remember, when we did this assignment, the intention was to show you how asset allocation, which is in terms of investment strategies, it is the most it's the most influential strategy, investment strategy, that will determine the results of your portfolio. So it can move the needle. The more assets you have invested, the more important and the more benefits you get from good asset allocation. So that's all that was, is for you to go into your plan and select some asset classes that you liked, that made sense, and then watch how that moved the needle on your plan. So that's student number 2 did a great job of that. Now let's jump into asset allocation details. If you want more information, you can see here this graph just gives you a quick overview of where your portfolio is out of balance. So here you've got a target and well, I'm having trouble there. So the current 46% versus the target, you can see that in the chart. That's all I wanted to point out there. So let's see. And then we get into tax allocation. So student number 3 did a great job in tax allocation, taxable, tax deferred, and tax free. It's pretty simple, but when especially as you get older, as you get to be my age, you want to have some assets in the tax-free bucket, and you want to have assets in the tax-deferred bucket. If you put everything in the taxable bucket, you're going to pay for that every time you make trades, every time you'll have a lot of taxable events, and it will erode the results in your portfolio. So that was the purpose of tax allocation. So if we jump into, let's say, I think this is student number 2. Student number 2 did a great job as well. Let's see what student number 1 did. Everybody did great. Most everybody did great on this assignment. It wasn't that difficult. You basically pretended to inherit $150,000, and you had to select 3 different account types, which you did. So it's super easy. And then we get into the retirement analysis, and this is really like the core piece of your financial plan, where your plan gives you a percentage of probability of success. And so we get into the action items, and this is an important part of your capstone, is to show me what you've done, what you tweaked in your retirement to move the needle. So in this case, the student didn't really get much needle movement, and you can see why if you scroll down and look at what they did in their plan. So for example, student number 1 did not apply any debt strategy. And so I don't know exactly how much debt we have in this plan, but if you didn't apply that strategy, you didn't get any benefit, and that didn't move the needle on your retirement probability of success. So that's what I'm looking for, is what did you do in your plan to move the needle on your probability of success? And we talked about several ways to do that, like retiring later, working longer, spending less in retirement, saving more while you're working. There's lots of ways for you to move the needle on this retirement analysis. So that's what that is. Let's see what this is. Student number 1. Let's take a look at student number 3. That's number 1. I'm not getting my... So here's number 2. Not much change in that probability of success. Again, these are 2 things I'm looking for here is, did you do it asset allocation? Student number 2 did not. Did you use the debt strategy? Again, student number 2 did not. So in terms of losing points on the capstone assignment, this is where you would lose some points because you just didn't do anything to move the needle. Everything's the same from current to proposed. So click on that drop down window, make some changes, save it, and then it'll go into and grab a screenshot, and you'll be showing me that you understand what we're trying to do here by moving the needle, by changing a few of the things in your plan, like the things I mentioned. So that's retirement analysis. And I think that's pretty much it. I do want to mention your cash flows. Cash flows are very helpful. So if you look at this student number 3, you can see that in the year 2021, total inflows $58,000. That means income is basically $58,000, but the expenses are $75,000. So naturally, the total outflows of $93,000 is going to create a deficit, and you can see that deficit that they're going in the hole. So not sure what's going on. I mean, I could take a deeper dive into this, but it tells me initially there's too many expenses and not enough income. So what are we going to do about that? I would go into the plan and take a look at those expenses and see where they're coming from. If this was your plan, I would expect you to do that before you complete your capstone. It's just figure out, are you spending more than you're receiving? If you are, that's a problem, and at least be aware of it and explain it. So you can see here that the expenses are actually going down, and then at some point, I think probably when the mortgage gets paid off, this would start to, well, it actually doesn't. This plan is basically failing. So this is the cash flow, just something you can look at to kind of unpack what's going on in your plan. So let me just take a look at, this is student number 1, their cash flow. They have $75,000 income, and I think this was your plan, Nicholas, and I think no, this wasn't Nicholas. This student had a much higher income, I believe, and I changed it because it was way more than seemed appropriate. But at any rate, this plan, $75,000 income, $100,900 of expenses. So naturally, again, it's a deficit. So let's take a look at cash flow for, I'm not getting student number 3, student number 2. Where's student number 1? There's number 1. That's a deficit. We just looked at that. Student number 2. So yes, student number 2 has better inflows and less outflows and a much smaller deficit, and eventually starts to basically break even. So I'm not sure. I didn't jump into the plan and really look at what's going on in the plan. But again, this is the first thing I would do if I'm looking at a plan that has some questionable things going on in the retirement analysis. I would jump into the cash flow. So you can do that in your plan. Just jump into the cash flow. So maybe I should show you how to do that real quick. I'm going to just jump into a plan. Hope I can grab a plan without getting too much stuff. Billy Adams, that's a good plan to jump into. Billy and his girlfriend Sally. So I'm just going to show you when you go to the retirement analysis, it's going to give you that probability of success. And again, here's the drop down window I was talking about. The reason Billy's plan is successful here is because I've given him the proposed retirement age of 74. So if I go to 67 and hit refresh, it's gonna, and we're at most aggressive. That's the asset allocation we're proposing. So 92% with most aggressive. If I go to current allocation, let's see what happens, just for fun. And this is what I would want you to do in your plan, is just play around with some of these different changes that you could make in your retirement analysis. This is where you're demonstrating to me that you're getting what's going on in your financial plan, and it's really easy to do. So again, here I look at Billy's plan, and if he turned in his capstone and it had 20% probability of success, if I wanted to know more about the plan, the first thing I would do is jump into cash flow, and I would start to look at inflows and expenses. And I'm wondering, where's 172 grand? It's coming from his salary, $172,000. That's a lot. So Billy's salary and Sally's salary combined makes 172. So you saw how I did that. That's cash flows. So at any rate, that's pretty much it for this review. Hopefully this is helpful. Leave comments under the video. You're watching this on YouTube or in Money Study Group, and go ahead and leave a comment and tell me if you have questions or if there's something else I can do to make this review more effective for you. That's going to do it for this review, though, for now. Until next time, thanks for watching the video. I'll see you in the next Zoom meeting.